or even the middle of the night. And I really appreciate, you showing up. I think when we think about first gen docs, we're really thinking about, what it means to persevere in life. And I'm just thinking as we get started about, what it means to really engage with the hustle of life. And, I was at this retreat last week, and they were talking about what it means to move from hustle to flow in our work. And it made me wonder and think about, can first gens ever really be in the flow? We've really all grown up thinking about how to hustle, how to make and persevere and make a better life for ourselves and continuing generations to come. And many of us have grown up watching our families and people around us hustling, whether it be shift work, long commutes, thinking about bills stacking up. And the resilience, however, to not give up is something that really characterizes what it means to be a first gen, to hustle and to really persevere in that hustle. So I sometimes stop to think about, and how do we really move from that hustle to being in the flow, or is that flow really part of the domain of privileged folks? So, when we think about the diversities and differences of our various positionalities, and what doesn't always come to mind is the first gen status. So it's not a dispositive indicator of what it means to be in a marginalized position, such as race or gender, but it still adds a layer of oppression. And I think that that is a theme that's going to come up in our discussion this evening. And I'm really grateful to welcome you all here today to be part of this conversation. I'm grateful that we have my amazing friend and colleague here with us this evening, Laurie Gallant. Laurie is a visual artist and an educator, a university instructor, and an author. Every time I talk to Laurie, I actually learn something new and I discover something new that she's up to. So Laurie and I met to discuss this book, and she read an early draft of everyone's chapters and came up with a rendition of this beautiful painting that you see on the book cover. I'm going to pass it over to you, Laurie, to open up our evening and with a land acknowledgement and to share about yourself and your artwork that you rendered for this book. So thank you so much, Laurie.
Thank you, Crystena. So Scano ga nigiat so Laurie Gallant niwa coincident guy kono Oswego Dwaga Dango. So hello, my name is Laurie Gallant. I am from Six Nations of the Grand River Territory. I'm a Cayuga Nation. So when I talk about territorial acknowledgement, we usually, that's something that someone else does. Because I'm actually on my home territory. I'm Haudenosaunee, and so the university itself is on the Haldeman Tract, which is the original territory for the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee, and it's part of that treaty made with Frederick Haldeman in 1784, 6 miles on either side of the Grand River from its mouth to its source. So that's Dundalk, Ontario, all the way to Lake Erie. And it was given in compensation for alliance during the American Revolution. And so we're all a part of this. We're part of this treaty. We're on this journey together. We're in places that we're going to interact, that we cross paths, and that we come face to face a lot of times. So I wanted to acknowledge the land. So I love how it says land acknowledgement, because it's really a land honoring, and we're all a part of that. We talk about all the living things that surrounds us. We talk about how we're thankful for those things, and that's what brings us into one mind. And we need to be of one mind when we come together. And so I give thanks to all those living things that are around us. And I start with our mother, which we call the earth, because she's literally here to support our feet wherever we walk, wherever you're standing, the places you are right now, where your home is, where you work, where your children go to school, everything that's around you, that is what supports your feet, every place that you walk. And that we always be conscious of beneath our feet is that earth that we call mother, who supports us wherever we go. And then we talk about all of the plants that surround us, and some people call them weeds, we call them medicine. And there are plants that we eat to nourish our bodies. There are plants that we pick and we gather to be medicines for us, preventative and things to help clear our minds and clear our thoughts and our hearts. And so those things are important. We give thanks for all those things. So then we talk about the animals. We give thanks for all of the living creatures around us, the ones that walk, the ones that fly, the ones that swim, the ones that crawl, how important they are in this cycle that we live in. And we're just a part of it. And so we're thankful for all of the animals and the living beings. We give thanks for the water, for the streams, for the lakes, for the rivers, for the oceans. We give thanks to the water that falls, and we give thanks to the water beneath the earth. And it nourishes our bodies, and we need those things. We need the water. We need it to survive, and all of the creatures around us need the water to survive. So we give thanks for all of those things. We give thanks for the winds that come from different directions and different seasons, and they come to cleanse the earth. And so we welcome those winds. We welcome what they bring for us, because when they bring something, they also take things away. So it's a constant cleansing. So it's important to give thanks for the winds. We give thanks to the thunder beings, the thunderers who bring the rains, and those rains cleanse the earth and they renew and refresh. They provide the water that we need that comes from the sky. And then we talk about the sun, who is represented as our older brother. And that sun actually feeds the plants. We need the sun to keep us warm. And it's like comforting us. So it renews us, it refreshes us, it provides life for us. And we call the sun our older brother. And then we look to the moon. At nighttime, sometimes we can see her so very clearly. The moon is our grandmother, and she's filled with wisdom. She's filled with guidance. She shines on us and looks on us and provides us with wisdom when we need it. And along with her and the stars at night that lead us and guide us when we need direction, are always there for us. And then we talk about teachers and elders and knowledge keepers, those people who come across our path that leave something for us, that help us along our way and help us navigate our life. They give us something that's important, that's just for us. And we give thanks for those people that come across our path. And then finally, we give thanks to the Creator who's provided all of these things so that we can live a good life here on this earth in unison with each other, in relationship with the universe, in relationship with all of the plants and the animals and everything that lives around us, that we give thanks for it. And when we do that, we give thanks, we bring all our minds together. And at the end of this, we say that now we are one, because we've given thanks to all of these things. And we do this every day. As Indigenous people, we want to be thankful for the things that we have, so that it will be here 7 generations beyond us. The choices we make, the words that we say, should affect in a good way 7 generations from where we stand. So that's a land honoring. And for me, that's something that I do every day. So I hope you can find your way of doing that every day too. When you wake up in the morning, think of everything around you. It's a beautiful way to start the day. How can we go out in the morning with any kind of feelings of sadness when we know there's so many things that surround us each and every day that love and appreciate us? I think of how we live together when we actually share the breath with the plant. We share breath with the trees. How beautiful is that? What a beautiful relationship that is. So with this art piece, I want to talk to you about just really briefly some of the images in here, understanding the stories of people who have removed themselves from someplace to navigate a whole new world. I'm pretty familiar with that as being an Indigenous woman. We have a foot in both worlds all the time, to hold on to our culture and our traditional way of being, and operate in a Western world, and have to speak a language, understand a government, understand a system that is very foreign to what traditionally been practiced within our own community, and still is to this day. So a lot of times we are walking with one foot in both worlds. And so those two trees symbolize those two generations, that new generation that has to find a new footing, has to find a new place to dig their roots in, but carry all of the knowledge and significance and importance and teaching and care and love and culture with them into this new place, not leaving it behind, because it literally is in our DNA. It's not the things we carry that make us who we are. It's us. It's what's in our heart. It's not the physical thing, but it's what's in our heart. It's really in our blood. So you can see there's a ladder. Everybody talked about a ladder. It's something that's hard to climb. It's difficult. And we know that when we navigate this whole process of leaving something behind to move towards something, and working in a world that's very different than us, it is hard. It's up. It's not down. It's something where you have to hang on to each rung of that ladder. It's not like walking upstairs. A ladder, it really requires a lot of effort and support. And the trees symbolize those generations. The bigger tree on the right represents their elders and their ancestors and those who come before us, who have planted deep, deep roots, but still connected to us. They're still the source. They're still the source of life and nutrients to our beings, spiritually, physically, emotionally. They're still there. They haven't gone anywhere. They're still there, and they're still feeding us. They're still feeding our sense of well-being and our identity. We don't have to let go of our identity. And in the middle, you'll notice that they are connected. The moon is there as our grandmother who is guiding us, the nurturer, the one who shows us the way in a gentle and kind way. You see the stars that provide guidance, and a wing of a butterfly, which a butterfly migrates. Butterflies migrate all the time. They are able to go back and forth with the seasons. And so we can go back and forth with those seasons of our life, whatever that journey is. You also see a braid, and the braid represents the braid of sweetgrass. And whenever you see sweetgrass or smell sweetgrass, for us, it's the reminder of Mother Earth. It's her hair. And as we braid it together, we symbolically recognize that she meets our needs. So we don't have to worry. So we don't have to panic about, what are we going to eat? What are we going to do? It's that if we give thanks to the earth will take care of us, and we take care of us, the earth. So it's a very reciprocal relationship. So it's really a circle. Everything's connected. Everything brings everything together, and it unifies everyone. And the strand of DNA represented with the red represent our blood. It is in our DNA. It's in our blood memory. When we move from one place to another, we take all of it with us because it is in our DNA. And then we begin to grow new roots, plant new seeds, provide our next generation, be the connection from our ancestors to our children. We're the connection. We become the ones that join them together and make them feel safe so that they can continue the journey. And who knows where that journey goes? Hopefully, we're all going to come together, but we're constantly on a journey that allows us to share information, to feel comfortable with each other. We all have histories, we all have experiences, and we all have stories. And it's really what makes this society or community a beautiful place to be, if we can share all of those things. So thank you, Crystena, for letting me take part in this, for letting me provide you with the artwork, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Lori. Your words are powerful. I always learn something from you every time I hear you speak, and I think back to, when I was working on this book and we had a call. I was talking to Lori, and in the room next to me, there was my late grandmother, and she was 96 at the time and had just moved in with my family to spend her final days on Earth. And at the moment, I was feeling quite stressed. I had 2 small kids, a partner that travels, and stressing about what she needed to feel comfortable. And Lori, you saw my stress in that moment, and I'm not sure if you remember, but what you said to me was so transformative and had such an impact on me, you just said how beautiful it was to have multi-generational people in our home. And it was such a beautiful and gentle reminder of how we can think of being so close to our ancestors. And we often hear, and you taught me so much about, thinking about the 7 generations and the importance of the 7 generations. And you had guided me to think about, 3 generations back, our present generation, and 3 generations forward. And in all cases, I've been thinking of this feeling of what it means to do this work and the work that our ancestors envisioned for us. And I feel like when we think about first gen, it really is this topic. The idea of being a first gen forces us to think about our previous generations and continuing generations. And it's really about, what can be, but also moving forward with equity and with humanity. So thank you so much, Lori, for your kind words today to open up our evening. So our plan for this evening, after we finish our opening remarks, is to spend time in a virtual circle together where each chapter author who can be present here today will have an opportunity to speak and share about their chapter, as well as respond to another chapter author. And we hope to have some time for Q&A where you and everyone present can have time to ask questions if you'd like, and we will respond amongst all of us here. So that's what we hope to accomplish in the time we have together. I also want to just take a moment to thank our wonderful co-sponsors, Renison University College, SciDec at OISE, as well as our amazing event organizers, Robert Fantazzi and Carrie Cornies, who helped to put this amazing event together. I'd now like to turn it over to Dr. Crystena Montero, our Vice President and Academic Dean at Renison University College at the University of Waterloo. Thank you for being here today and for sharing your words with us.
Thank you so much, Crystena. It's a real pleasure to be here this evening to offer some opening remarks for this launch of Crystena's edited volume titled First Gen Docs, Personal, Political, and Intellectual Perspectives from the First-Generation Doctoral Experience. First, I'd like to congratulate each author for your remarkable courage in sharing your personal, curated stories, and curated with methodological rigor. And they're really a testament to the strength and resiliation of first-gen docs. The stories are simultaneously rich and raw, deeply rooted in theoretical frames that forge connections among these stories and the experiences of other first-gen docs through critical theories related to identities, intersectionalities, language, race, culture, and others. When Crystena invited me to provide some opening remarks, I didn't hesitate. I immediately said, I'm a first-gen doc too. And I think that's where that's where we start. We're first-gen docs. And I received my PhD in reading education, also language and literacy from the University of Georgia in the United States. It was a long journey. And when I started thinking about, okay, what am I going to say during this? I started writing some thoughts down for these opening remarks. And I just found myself writing about my journey, just like many of you did. And it was, like I have notes all over the place, and like I've thought about these things, but it's actually really cathartic to actually begin to write it down. And as I was writing, one of the stories that really stood out to me was my entry into the academic discourse community, which was not my primary discourse. How could it be my primary discourse coming from an immigrant community? My mother and father came from Spain and Finland, and neither of them had even a high school education, and they valued education. This was one thing that they really valued. So I recall that I was a first-year doc student at the University of Georgia, and I was taking a class with Dr. Judith Priestley. Dr. Judith Priestley is a real pioneer in qualitative research, and she spent her many, many years, I think her career at the University of Georgia. And I remember sitting in this class, and there I was, eager, taking my notes, and I just kept hearing words like epistemology, ontology, Gramsci, critical theory. And I sat there and I thought, okay, I have no idea what you're saying. I do not understand these words. I am not smart enough to be here. I need to leave. I connected myself with other first gen folks, and and then some people talked me off the ledge, and they're like, no, you are supposed to be here in this classroom. You're accepted, you're smart, away we go. So I learned, I listened, I tried to engage in this new discourse community. And so I'll tell you one thing. I have this in my bookshelf. I'll just hold it here and tell you what it is. This is the Cambridge Dictionary of Philosophy. I went to the bookstore at the University of Georgia, and I went to buy this book so that I could actually figure out, what does epistemology and ontology mean? I had no idea. So there we go. This is my reminder. And as I started learning about this new discourse community and understanding what James G., who's a sociolinguistic, was calling the secondary discourse. And so through G's work, I began to theorize and understand some of what I was experiencing. And I saw and I experienced that in order to join this academic discourse community, I couldn't simply learn my way into proficiency. I couldn't just study the words. That was not sufficient. I had to become my way into proficiency. And I love what James G. calls mush faking, fake it till you make it kind of idea. And sometimes I really did just mush fake. I said, oh yeah, well, that epistemology, and until I actually learned what that actually means within the research context. What does it mean to know, to see, to do? And then I eventually gained greater access into this academic discourse community through apprenticeship, what James G. calls apprenticeship, through my classes, through mentors, through TA, RA opportunities, conference presentations, just to name a few. And slowly, I began to gain membership into this, what was once a foreign discourse community. So just a very small story. Hopefully it was funny, or maybe you reflected and connected to it in some way. I also think that although there's much success in this journey, there's also loss, as many of the authors have related throughout their chapters. And some of the loss was welcomed, but some of the loss was also not. It's deep loss, and it's regrettable. It's regrettably undoable. Some of it is loss of relationship as you enter into this new discourse community. And really, the doctoral journey is life altering. Today, I wear the badge, or I think of it as a badge, the first gen PhD, as a badge of honor, that somehow I have survived and thrived in this arduous life-altering journey. Although thinking back, so I got my PhD in 2004, so 20 years ago. I wish I could have had the stories that are in this volume to actually lean on and learn from others' experiences. Many times I felt that I was just off on my own experiencing these things, and it just would have been nice to say, or to know that, oh, what I was experiencing was within the realm of normal. So this is what this book that I see this book is really offering other first generation doc students and doctoral candidates and doctorates, this understanding and engaging in this larger evolution into this academic secondary discourse community. So I'm grateful to each of you for your willingness to share your experiences and create the space where being a first gen PhD or EDD is not necessarily unique. And we can normalize our experiences into the research and into knowledge creation. We don't have to become something that historically doctoral studies have been. We can create it. We can do something different. So first gen docs are carving new ways of knowing and new ways of seeing the world. And this is so super exciting. And so thank you all for this beautiful, beautiful collection. I hope that it inspires others to have the courage to do as you all have done. Thank you so much, Crystena, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and words.
Yeah, thank you so much, Crystena. And we are so grateful that you have shared your words with us and have supported this work. And it was really beautiful to hear your own story and about your own experience and journey. And since Renison is an interdisciplinary academic unit, our VPs can come from many different fields in the arts and social sciences. So I think it's so wonderful that we have you as our academic dean and vice president, who comes from the field of education and can speak directly to what our focus is today about the doctoral journey in the field of education. So I really appreciate your insights and for you setting the stage so beautifully. So I'm now going to turn our full attention to our contributors, the reason we're here tonight, the amazing people who have come together and have written chapters to contribute to this volume. And again, you know, the uniqueness of this book is the focus on education, particularly in the doctoral journey, which is so critical in so many ways. And we'll hear from Dr. Brent Bradford in a moment, but as you know, we think about the doctoral journey and the importance of people who contribute in this particular space, it's quite interesting to really see how a lot of people coming back to pursue graduate work in education have had a full career. Others are drawn either as a teacher or VP, and then others are drawn maybe because of their own schooling experiences. But in all cases, oftentimes we see people pursuing this particular field because they want to change something. They experience something in the system and are wanting to change something and are all contributing to that change together. And what's really unique is that the people who are present here today have done such phenomenal work without that familial roadmap that has been there to guide some other people who are continuing generation in terms of access to doctoral programs. So when we think about this journey, I would just like to thank all of you. And so as we go around, I'll invite each of you to share a short summary of your chapter while also responding to the person who just shared before you. I'm going to start and open our circle today with sharing a bit about my own experience. And as a first-generation university student and also as a woman of color, my path involved many struggles, but also many beautiful opportunities. I have a picture here of my doctoral supervisor, Dr. Kathy Bickmore, and myself, who I'm grateful is here today with us and part of our circle, and also what is a very special photo representing 4 generations. So my journey actually began with my passion for visual arts, which transformed quite quickly through the program I was in at the University of Toronto, and eventually found its true calling in peace-building education, and now more so in the field of restorative justice. Navigating the doctoral program for me was not just an academic exercise, although I went into it thinking that's what it would be. But I found that it was a profound engagement with my identity. My research and what I found myself studying was focusing on how first and second generation immigrant students integrated into their elementary and middle school classrooms, and how their teachers implemented curriculum connected to their identities and subsequently shaped their learning outcomes. So it was very much connected to experiences I had, as well as the ways in which I chose to interpret what I was studying in various classroom settings. So this journey for me was really underpinned by the relationships I built, choosing the right mentor and shifting academic focus when necessary. It really taught me the importance of adaptability and resilience. And I think resilience is a term that often comes up when we're thinking about the doctoral journey overall and when thinking about the overall process. For me, I found the comprehensive exam process to be quite lonely and competitive. Receiving funding while teaching sessional courses made it harder to secure additional financial aid. And I had a supervisor and committee that held me to high expectations. And I felt that each hurdle was that I crossed was a testament to the support of amazing friends and mentors that I had, as well as the inner strength that comes from people who know they have to stay in the hustle to survive and can only imagine being in the flow. So I'm really grateful to the mentors that actually that were introducing me to that concept just last week. So my story about the path of first-generation students, particularly those from marginalized communities, it's really about the need for institutional systems to create an environment that not only acknowledges, but actively supports people from various backgrounds and identities coming through doctoral programs in education. And above all, for me, when I think about the doctoral journey as a first gen, it's about carrying forward with my ancestors' work and the voices of those 3 generations back and 3 generations forward. And I thank you again, Lori, for walking with me as I think through that process. So thank you all for allowing me to share my story with you here today, which I hope will inspire ongoing dialogue as we take action in academia towards a more inclusive community. I will pass it over, if we were in a talking circle, I'll pass it over now to Brent, Dr. Brent Bradford, who is a series editor for the Doctoral Journey in Education. And thank you so much for being here to share your time and words with us today.
Thank you so much, Crystena. I am going to put my clock on here. I wanted to, first of all, thank you, Crystena, for this opportunity to speak at your book launch today. And I also want to congratulate all the authors who have taken part in this unbelievable collective narrative in regards to First Gen Docs. This is an amazing book. And as a series editor, I have to say that I'm so fortunate to be able to read through all of the books as they're being published, prior to being published and everything. And I just want to say congratulations to all of the authors in terms of how you communicated throughout your chapters of your doctoral journey. I am going to kind of combine a few minutes here, some information regarding the book series, as well as a little background knowledge as well as to how this book series originated. So I was a school teacher for 10 years in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And following those 10 years, I returned to graduate school where I went on to earn a Master's of Education with the idea of returning to the school district to take on some administration role. Most specifically, a consultant role was my kind of my journey that I was heading back to. And during my Master's of Education year, I was actually approached by my supervisor at the University of Alberta if I ever thought of taking a doctorate, which I had no idea about what that was. And so this was a real eye-opener for me at that time. Needless to say, I never returned to the school district. I went right into my doctorate and started working towards a PhD, which I earned my doctorate in 2015. One of the things that really resonated with me was to find some ideas on what some of the journeys were of others who were teachers, who were school teachers, and chose to go back and earn a doctorate. And I was really fascinated with that question as I was going through my own journey with that. So as my career started, and I'm an associate professor with Concordia University of Edmonton, I started to think about, what it would be like to hear stories from graduates from around the world who in the field of education, particularly, who had teaching backgrounds and who chose to go back and earn a doctorate, and wherever that doctorate would take you. What was it? What was it about earning that doctorate? And what were some of the reasons? And that led into a publication that became the Doctoral Journey, International Educationalist Perspectives, that was published in 2021. That link is at the bottom of my slide here, and it's the first one called International Educational Perspectives. Please take a look at it. That first book, which I call Book One, which helped initiate this book series, had amazing chapters in it, one being Crystena's chapter. So please click on the link and take a look at chapter 8. Crystena, I remember the first time I met Crystena, the first time I invited you to participate in the book and maybe think about writing that chapter, and working with you throughout that chapter called Exploring Place and Identity Through Research. It's been a phenomenal opportunity to work with you, Crystena, over the years now, and to see your chapter in the first book come through and be an amazing piece of literature regarding the doctoral journey in education. And then to hear your initial proposal for a book called First Gen Docs. It's been amazing to work with you throughout this, and I'm so excited. And as everyone here can imagine how proud I am as series editor to be sitting here at this book launch when I know the journey that Crystena went through to put this book together, all the hard work, all the hours of collecting the information and obviously editing and sharing. And Crystena and I went back and forth, and the beautiful, beautiful artwork at the front of the book. Excellent book. And I just want to let everybody know that Crystena has just, you have been a phenomenal editor in this process, and I look forward to future work with you. As I wrote down on my slide, everyone, I just wrote a few ideas regarding this, and I'm just checking my time here, but I did want to let everybody know that, you know, earning a doctorate is laborious, right? We all know that, and we heard this already tonight, and I just look forward to hearing everyone's stories, and I just hope that we can take some time at the end of this and in our panel discussion and ask some questions, and I look forward to hearing from you. Feel free to email me at any time if you have any questions about the book series. My email's at the bottom, and other than that, I look forward to listening to all of the authors tonight, and thank you for giving me the space today, Crystena, to speak a bit. I'd like to now introduce Newton as our next author.
Hi, my name is Diana. I'll be taking Newton's place. I'd like to just echo a little bit of what the previous speakers have mentioned, especially Laurie, who mentioned that about having a foot in both worlds. So I come from Singapore, and we have a very strong Asian context and Asian background here, and the idea of having a foot in both worlds is pretty significant here, in having an Asian context, but also living in a wider context that's more global and also global and also westernized. So it's something that we have to understand even as a student, but also as a doctoral graduate. There is an expectation for us to emphasize an Asian context, but as well as a global context. And just to emphasize also the previous speaker, Brent, thank you so much for sharing. But something that was on the slide really spoke out to me, where you said it does not leave an individual or a person unchanged, and it's not for the faint-hearted, which is something I think a lot of us can resonate with. And with my presentation today, or at least with my sharing of the chapter, I have 3 photos up there. The reason being, my chapter was actually inspired by Alice in Wonderland, or rather the earlier versions of Lewis Carroll's books, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and also Through the Looking Glass, and what Alice found there, and exactly what was there on Brent's slide, right? It doesn't leave a person unchanged, because Alice goes through this whole journey that leaves her changed. She goes through so many experiences. Her identity, she questions her identity through that journey. But by highlighting these 3 characters that I'm going to be speaking about today, it just gives us a bit of reminders, a little bit of emphasis on understanding ourselves first and foremost, our intention most importantly, as we go through the whole journey. Just a little bit of background. The idea of a minority, the idea of being minoritized, for example, is different in different contexts. Coming from Singapore, I'm a Malay Muslim. We are considered a minority in the context, in Singapore's context, but at the same time, a substantial minority. So there is a huge community here, but in comparison to the whole of Singaporean society, it's still pretty small. So of course, there are a lot of socioeconomic issues that are constantly being talked about. But at the same time, in that sense, the idea here is to make sure that as an individual, for myself, I want to make sure that I'm not just responsible for the community, but to be an active contributor as well, representing the community, but making sure that I do also contribute to the rest of the society. So for the first character in the book, actually, is the cat. And in the book, it says, Alice asks, would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here? And the cat says, that depends a good deal on where you want to get to. Alice then replies, I don't much care where, so long as I get somewhere. And the cat replies, oh, you're sure to do that? Only if you walk long enough. So the lesson here is, each of us as an individual, and in embarking this journey, we do have to take that extra mile. we do have to take that road to make sure that we get what we want. Also understanding our own preferences, our needs, which is unique because we may not have access to the resources. We might not have access to the network, for example. We do have to take that extra effort into achieving what we do want to achieve. For the picture in the middle, it's actually the caterpillar in the book. So the caterpillar, or rather Alice asks the caterpillar, when you turn into a chrysalis and then after that into a butterfly, I should think that you feel a little queer, won't you? And the caterpillar says, not a bit. Alice then asks, perhaps your feelings might be different, because all I know that it would feel very queer to me. And the caterpillar asks again, you, who are you? So the idea here is to remember ourselves, to remember our own identities, and to remember our own intentions, why we started this journey in the first place. We are learning through the difficulties, we have to adapt, but it's important to keep our goals and our purpose when we are actually embarking on this journey. And the last photo is actually that of the dodo. The dodo, he basically says, the best way to explain it, and it being anything that we want to embark on, is to do it. And that idea here is that, sometimes before we embark on this journey or before we embark on anything, whether it's, starting a doctoral journey or anything else, we may have the apprehension, we may have the anxiety and so on and so forth, but it's that motivation that we need to kind of put the first step and then take the next steps to make sure that we achieve even more. So here I ended off the chapter by saying that the whole journey really is a journey of perseverance. And I also like to echo what Dr. Crystena said earlier about hustle and flow, right? I think it's very true that we all do have to hustle, and we grew up learning about hustling. That is exactly what we understand. But even in this journey, and as we finish our PhDs, or if we have already finished, as we go on further into our own careers, it's about also creating our own flow. And because we come from different perspectives, we probably see things from different angles that maybe others might not actually be able to see. So that's our unique contribution. So yeah, that's all for me. I'd like to hand off the time to Yecid. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diana, for your wonderful presentation and reminding us of the journey that we have been going through for a long time, and the idea of questioning and remembering our identity, our background, our roots, and also reminding us of the idea of the concept of what it means to be minoritized. It means something in different contexts. And as such, coming from a minoritized community in Colombia, in the south of Bogota, where many poor people live, to this date, I was not supposed to be here today. I was supposed to be dead or perhaps in jail, because the places where was born and raised is full of gangs and drug dealings and violence. And I guess what I wanted to share with you is, with this photograph, is my mom, who was central for me to precisely be away from the gangs and the violence and the drug dealing in that particular community. And it was because of her who was helping me out, and my brother as well, to stay away from that, by supporting us and helping us by getting some education. My mother used to clean bathrooms for the rich people and arrive home at 7 p.m. And at this point, in the picture you see, after she arrives from home, helping us out with some homework, because she knew she wanted us to be away from that violence and gangs and death that was happening in the streets of Bogota. So it was because of her that I am here today. She pushed me at every moment to this date to keep expanding horizons and learning from others and trying to study hard. And I took that inspiration to pursue my studies, high school, and then my bachelor's degree, the master's in Canada, and the PhD after that. And I decided to take these opportunities to move away from those violent moments and to be somebody, as she said, and continuously saying, I want you to go out of Colombia and be somebody and do something with your life, that you don't have to die in this particular space. And I took all of those knowledges that she brought to me, and that's why right now I am this person who go to different places trying to do some of the work that I have been doing along the lines of social justice, precisely to give back to the community where I grew up, but not only in Colombia, but elsewhere where I go. Some of the work that I done, the research that I do, and the communities that I work with are the most marginalized communities, immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, and why not poor communities here in Belfast as well that I've been working as well. So in a sense, it's like a circle that I'm coming from a marginalized community in Colombia, but right now I'm working also with and for those communities who have also suffered the violence and the war in this particular time. So in a sense, the teachings and the support and help and the hassle and pain and the resilience that I've been going through in this journey that I have found in my mother's support is now being sort of replicated in this part. And then my chapter is precisely about that, finding the spark that has been through this journey to be able to work hard with and those communities. And I think that's it for me. So I invite everybody to read the chapter and hopefully be inspired for the future.
Thank you, Yecid. I cannot help but to resonate with your story. And it's something that I hope if folks have an opportunity to read my chapter. I started with the story of my mother as well. And it all stems from a sort of a moment when I was graduating high school, and what was supposed to be a time of rejoicing and commemorating a success it hit me, right? She hugged me and said, felicidades, hijo. But like she cried and said, I'm sorry I couldn't do more for you. And that hit me. That was something that, that was a bit of a foreign sort of concept. That you gave me everything I needed, right? And it seems you see that was a sort of same approach that your mom did for you, right? And continues to sort of inspire and spark in you. So I resonate wholeheartedly with that, and I share here some photos, particularly around my family, and so you'll see, little Miguel there, in the middle on my mom's lap here amongst my family, my siblings. I have 4 sisters and a brother. Grew up in New York City, and yeah, we lived that impoverished urban, urban impoverished sort of life, and it was difficult. But again, that concept of you didn't provide enough for me when I thought I had it all, right? I had love, and yes, we scrambled for some food every now and then, but we did all right. And living in New York City was really interesting in the fact that that was all I ever knew, right? There was certain conditions that I was okay with. I questioned, of course, even before getting into college. I questioned, why do we live the way we do, or why is the situation the way it is? But it was not anything more of, this is kind of just how things are, right? Unfortunately, when I got into higher education, that really sort of shaped out and had me understand that there was more to the story, that there was more to the decisions my mom made. There was more to sort of the environment that I was living to. There were sort of infrastructure and systematic components to poverty. There were systematic components to sort of generational poverty and access to certain spaces and institutions that now I have privilege of, but at one point I questioned quite a bit. And in joining higher education, so I list some of the areas that I was able to partake in terms of my educational journey here. Went to Geneseo in upstate New York for my undergraduate career. Brockport for my master's and for my doctorate at the University of Rochester. But from the start of my educational journey in higher education, I fell in love with it. I wasn't anywhere or anything close to what I am today. It's interesting when I talk to my students about sort of my upbringing or who I was 15 years ago. And this is of no shame at all, but I was a person with do-rags and 3XL shirts and saying, cussing every other sentence. I still loved myself back there, but then I found something new when I entered the space of higher education and academia. I found a love that I didn't know I needed, and I didn't know that I wanted, or didn't know even existed. And so stepping into these spaces, I took advantage of everything. But what was interesting is that as I was sort of navigating the space or navigating this sort of unknown culture, and as much as I was falling in love with it, every time I went back home, I didn't know who I was anymore, or I needed to change myself based on what I thought my family wanted me to be. They didn't want to lose the Miguel they knew their whole lives. And at the same time, though, then I stepped back to now what I call my academic home, my home away from home. I didn't sometimes know how to show face or be authentic and be the Miguel from New York City in the academic setting. I didn't know if I was able to use slang or say a certain term or whatever it was that I was experiencing. I didn't know if that was acceptable in the higher education landscape. But both these places were my home, and so I was living sort of this dual life, and I was trying to navigate, how do I do this? How do I make sure that I am me and I'm okay with being me across all social settings and across any space that I enter? And that's still a lifelong journey of mine. I've gotten a lot better with it, but it's still a lifelong journey, right? The way I talk, the way I act, the way I behave, sort of my philosophies and ideologies, I'm working towards consistency across all social spaces, and I'm loving who I am because of it, right? That consistency of my brand and my reputation and just my character in any setting that I go into, I am me, and I found me. And that was interesting to navigate from the undergraduate journey straight into the doctoral. Going even into a private institution like the University of Rochester for education was a bit of a foreign concept to me. I was scared. I was like, I hear private education is a lot more rigorous than public education, and that is a myth that I think I really am debunked, at least for myself. And so stepping across these social spaces, whether I'm back home in New York City or hanging out with friends that I grew up with or made acquaintances, during my time in education. And then whenever I do step back into the academic home, the academic institution, I find that I am who I am, and I'm okay with grounding myself in who I am. That authenticity is actually important. As I move towards this work in diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice, it's important for us to remain who we are and tell our story through our own voice, and that we should appreciate that there is something to learn through that as well. And in trying to understand this, and as I was really digging into the literature around this, because I had to make sense of what I was experiencing here, I was really happy to come across Christina Linsky's and her colleagues, her reintegration theory, and that was really stemmed from folks integrating back into their home settings from going away to combat. So this was really a sort of focus on the military here, and I have no experience in that by any means, but I was just trying to understand what I was experiencing as I was entering different contexts. And there was a social component to this. There's a cultural reintegration. There's a notion of having to sort of reassume or resume roles and whether that's within my family, my community, my workplace, right? And so this made sense, at least in trying to capture what I was experiencing. And now I'm fortunate to be in a position where I work directly with first-generation students across the educational pipeline, from pre-college to graduate, in which I share my story, and I share it mainly to make sure that folks understand that there are things that make sense out there, that are making sense of our journey, and that we are contributors to this educational landscape, that in many respects we are pioneers, and that let's continue sharing our voice. Let's continue sharing our experience, and by doing so, I think we are changing the cultural climate of higher education, not just spaces but systems in general, which will allow for a lot more room for first-gen folks and other folks of underrepresented backgrounds. So I hope folks enjoy my chapter moving forward, and I thank you for the time here.
Hi, sorry, I thought there was someone before me.
Yeah, Janel's here. If you can get back.
Okay, okay.
Or I can go later.
Sorry, Carrie, can we put it to Janelle's slide just right before?
I can just talk if you want me to. Okay, I will just go ahead. So I am Janelle Smith, and thank you, Miguel, for your comments. And just to bounce off what Miguel said, I grew up in an old coal mining town in Pennsylvania, United States. And when I left to go to college for my undergraduate, my dad said, don't ever come back. And he said, there are not opportunities here for you, and there's nothing here for you. And that really has stuck with me of why can I not go back? What is not there to go back? But it made me question, who am I and who am I coming from, the space that I was raised in. And over time, my parents, I have either, struggled with identifying myself as an educational professor with a doctorate. I am actually a senior lecturer. I am not a professor, and I have been called an almost professor by people. And I said, you don't even know what that means. I'm teaching 6 or 7 courses at a time, in order to fulfill my duties and publish and do all the other things that I need to do. And so I think that the other important thing too, in going back to who are we in our space, my mom had said that someone that I played field hockey with, the dad was very proud that she was going for her master's and said that she was focused on her career, not her family. And that resonates with me, what Crystena said, that a lot of who we are and who we are as first generation students is because of our family, and it's who we are passing things off to in our future generations. And that is something that as an educator and as a teacher educator, I want to not only impress upon the role of first generations for ourselves, but who we are impacting moving forward. And so I am a first generation undergrad, master's, and doctoral student. I moved away from my place to go to college, and then I moved further away from the north, from Pennsylvania, United States, to the south, to Georgia, United States. And that was a cultural shock to me. The role of a woman in society is not the same. The expectations of religion are not the same, and race is very different. Race is discussed in different ways, and the Civil War still stands very true and very strongly in what is said and not said. And I struggled through my doctoral program to identify myself and who I was. I never heard the term first generation until I became a faculty member at the university where I teach. Through my undergraduate, master's, or doctoral program, I had never heard that term. But it wasn't until 2021 where I was invited to do an hour-long YouTube session. It was a live session, and I didn't know what the questions were. And I said, sure, I'll do it, no problem. And then it made me really realize I'm putting myself out there. And what I'm saying and the experiences I have are important for my students. And it goes back to what Crystena said at the beginning. We know how to hustle. I ran in from my son's baseball practice to get here to navigate all these things. And we know how to do those things, but how do we know how to take a step back at some things? And how do we know how to recognize the calm points of our lives and of campus life? And so as we go through this program, this book, I think that it's become really important for me not only to share my own story, but to realize the impact that our stories has on our students. I teach at a small, I teach our large campus has different, our large university has different campuses. And in our current cohort, 80% are non-traditional students, and most of them are first generation. And there we go. And so one of my students, I've actually shared this chapter with her already because she has been second guessing herself every step along the way. Am I good enough? Am I going to be good enough? Am I going to get a job? And she said to me, I didn't realize how much further this journey is at a personal level. And I think that's something that as we all talk about identity, and as we talk about who we are and who we come from, and Miguel said that, I'm not that person I was. It took me 10 years to share my dissertation with my parents. And that really speaks to where I was for me. And when I wrote my dissertation, and as Crystena said, you're on your own, you're isolated, you're there, but it's your work. And it took me 10 years to be willing to share that with my parents. But as soon as this chapter came through, that went straight up. That was printed, went in an envelope, and went up to them. So I think it's really important as I go over time for us to continue to share our stories and who we are, who we continue to be, and who we will be for our students in the future. So thank you for including me, and I will pass it off.
Yeah, I'm just moved by everyone's story, and actually happy to come later after hearing the voices of all the beautiful stories that have been shared before mine. Yeah, I think the journey for me as a doctoral student, and actually when I was approached and I learned about the book, I said, well, that sounds very interesting, but I don't know if I define myself as like first generation. I am the first in my family to do a PhD, but not the first to have done other degrees. And coming into my doctorate much later in life, I think I occupied a space and a place that I think more and more, I don't know the statistics, but more students are coming into this space rather than traditionally just young after finishing their bachelor's and their master's. But I came in after, almost 2 decades working, after having children and having a family. And so my journey through the PhD was really defined both by my experiences having been the first in my family to do a PhD, but also in having a family of my own. I had my daughter 3 months into my doctoral course of study. And I always tell people, when I got my offer for my doctorate, and a full year for a scholarship, I also got my pregnancy test. And people were like, oh, you have to choose, you have to choose which one you're going to do. And I said, no, we're going to do both. and so the journey through the doctoral was, having a family. My economic status changed very dramatically, in which I really had to depend on so many other people. And I talk about the village that helped, both uphold me in terms of helping me with my assignments, but also helping me raise my children, taking my older son when I was in class, had my professors, they carried my child like in class with carriers. And so it was really a journey in which I created a new village, a new family, that really was very important for my journey there. And another part of the journey was also just the time and the circumstance in which when I was finishing my PhD. It was a time of great national upheaval, and I think, and now that I'm a assistant professor, I see my students, and some of them are going through similar, not the same things that I went through, but having to study and work in a time of great national upheaval. I wrote my dissertation also as a student, as an activist who was like on the streets during the day, protesting after the death of George Floyd and a Black man that was killed in our community the year before, and then having to stay up all night and write my dissertation. But I think some of the things that I, hope that people can learn from my chapter is also just the ways in which we can support doctoral students who come in with maybe sometimes very complex lives and are making very great sacrifices. I think for any of us, the PhD journey is a journey of great sacrifice. It's a very lonely and isolated journey in many ways. I remember being at family gatherings or coming out in the summer, and people were like, "Oh, you don't have any work to do," and having the lack of understanding that, we kind of always have work, even though it looks like it's just us and our computer. And I just wanted to read one of the lines from my chapter that says, "No matter how we justify sacrifice, it is often accompanied by a deep sense of guilt and even a sense of shame. However, this is perhaps a reason that we have to keep going, that we must finish and complete the journey because we are not completing it alone. We are taking everyone who has believed in us and everyone who has sacrificed alongside us." So thank you for the opportunity to share my chapter. I hope you have enjoyed reading the book, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be engaged in this work.
Thank you. This is Rosa Rodriguez, and I'm going to speak, but I want to see, can you tell us how you pronounce your name, please?
Nanre.
Nanre. So thank you, Nanre. I just did not want to mispronounce your name. So, Dr. Nanre's account of her experience in a doctoral program kind of brings to light both the challenges and joys of being a PhD student, a Black woman, a mother of young children, a community activist, and a family member. The chapter shares deep and personal reflections from that time that shows us the human side of doctoral work. Academia can often be cold and an isolating place for people, and it can be multiplied when you have intersecting identities that are traditionally not reflected in these spaces. And she does such a good job of showing that. We Elizabeth and I appreciated the vulnerability and the honesty that Nanre gave us, and learnings from both as student and from her advisors. When she was talking about her mentors, it reminded me that a good mentor or advisor can lift a doctoral student and guide them through the challenges of completing their work. And she also brought up these great points of recognizing and including and applauding mental health and family support services that are now being implemented at academic institutions. I think those issues that she brought up and points to are important for us to remember. They are important for all students, for non-traditional students, for first-gen students. And she also touched on the notion of creating communities in the field as she traveled through her academic journey. Most importantly, I love the idea that many of us belong in these spaces. The journey may be different and they all involve sacrifices, but the journey is what will hone the researcher.
Thank you,
Elizabeth.
Rosa.
Yeah.
So we're going to be sharing this time since we co-authored our chapter on first-generation Chicanas with doctorates advocating for the next generation of educational leaders. So I'm Elizabeth, and we started with a little bit of our own journeys being first-gen not just first gen in college, but also first gen in the country. So the first child born in the United States from a Mexican family, navigating schooling, navigating, hospitals and medical and forms and legal forms with our parents, but also how we were both, really good students, and we were kind of sought after for being good daughters. I went on to become a K-12 teacher, and then entered a doctoral program in something that was unexpected for me, which was an EDD program. So as a practitioner, I decided that I didn't want to leave the classroom and leave, and be immersed in a PhD program. So I began an EDD program. And I knew at the time my husband was in a PhD program, and I was told by many mentors, he's going to be more sought after in terms of jobs, and your degree might not be as prestigious as his. And my advisor, who was an amazing doctoral advisor, very strong Nicaraguan lawyer, who saw war and was like, we got this. We do this together. You and I, your dissertation is going to be just as good as his. And I don't know if I always believed it, but I pushed hard, and I finished. And my husband and I have sought academic opportunities together. So I'll let Rosa share a little bit about her story, and then we'll talk a little bit about the work we do with our own doctoral students.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, just as Elizabeth shared, first generation, I was born on the border. And so when you speak of having feet into spaces, I really, that resonates with me. I taught in East Los Angeles. It's it sounds funny now, but it's something that I enjoyed, and I had a great opportunity there. But I was always wanting to advocate more for the students that were there and for the teachers that were there. And so I continued my work in the PhD program, again, with a strong advisor, working with English language learners and second language and bilingual education. And that work was so powerful for me because it brought to me the need that I think that I was needing for more advocacy work, greater work in not just talking about these issues, but really providing opportunities for students and teachers to be more equity-minded, to be more aware of the organizational and the institutional kinds of barriers and challenges that we were putting in front of students and teachers, and not actually making the changes that needed to be made for students who were just joining English speaking institutions. So I think for both Elizabeth and I, when we got to this place, this EDD program, we were both looking at how do we prepare, help our first gen students, all of our students, but we were focused on our first gen students, especially for this chapter, in this EDD program, so that it's a viable path for first generation students and students of color, so that the opportunities and the successes that they can gain from this work and from taking classes when they are more available. So we have classes on the weekend, but we see that there's few financial opportunities for some of these students because they're working professionals. So always we see the opportunities, but we also see some of the barriers. And these are established leaders. This is a working professionals program, and they have done a lot of work in their settings, and they have a lot of experience. And they represent for these institutions the face of the students that they also want to attract. They've got positions in high level or mid-level organizations, and they are hiring our student leaders to bring in undergraduate students. But as they are bringing in our students feel that they need those research skills to be able to truly engage with the change making and policy making that they see going on in front of them. So I think that's where we went with our chapter. Well, we reflected on our experience and thought about, well, what is it that we can do? What can we learn from this, from our experience, our collective experience, to make the doctoral path even more accessible?
Yeah, we invite you all to check out our chapter. We provide some examples of the work we're doing and some of the policy changes that we've enacted and programmatic changes that we've enacted to support our students, and also the things that we continue to grapple with. And we thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. It has been really wonderful to hear all of these stories, and it has resonated so much with my personal journey. And in just kind of reflecting on what I just heard, I also, I'm at Widener University. I'm the Associate Dean for the College of Health and Human Services, but my tenure home is in the College of Education, where I have taught in educational leadership. And our population is very similar in that a lot of working professionals with lots of experience in schools and who are juggling just so many different things that I think a lot of us have talked about. And I think that one of the things that I hear is just that questioning of, do we belong as first-gen students? Am I smart enough to be here? Do I really belong here? Can I really do this? And so this chapter has been this was a really special piece of writing for me because it allowed me to really reflect on my own journey, but then I got a chance to recognize what privilege I came from. Even though I was in a first-gen, I was immigrated to the US with my family, but there were so many places of privilege that I encountered that really supported me in finishing my journey. And so everything from just the fact, like others have said, my parents really valued education and modeled education and pushed that forward and were very supportive. My husband, just like someone else had mentioned, was also in a doctoral program. And so I kind of learned through his process so that I was a little bit more socialized into like, what's an advisor, what's comps? Like I knew that going in because I walked with my husband through that journey. And I was also in a work environment that was very supportive of doctoral pursuits. I was the only one who without a doctorate. So everybody knew what it was like to go through the program. And I had lots of support from a research assistant who was helping me with my dissertation. So I just recognized what amazing privilege I had that supported me through my journey successfully. And I was really, I wanted to pass that on to my students. And being able to see, oh, these were the things that helped me in my journey. I want to make sure I create those spaces for the students in our program as well. And so my chapter really looked at just the systems of support that we built into our program, really recognizing the socio-ecological systems of looking at the individual all the way through to the program. And so we start off with really acknowledging our students as individuals and having them recognize that, wow, they have a lot of different challenges. They're juggling family and work and sometimes a sick family member. And so how do we as a program really support the fact that they have those challenges as individuals as well? And so we even start off with an exercise of looking at, why are you doing a doctorate? What's your why in doing this? So that really pushes you through those difficult times when you're not sure that you belong. We also look at how do we develop those social networks? I had family members who understood the journey. I had coworkers who understood the journey. So I had that social network. So how do we intentionally build that within our doctoral cohort? So we are very intentional about community building in our program and also doing cross-cohort community building so that people can learn from the doc students that are just ahead of them to know, like, what are those tips and tricks in getting through, and how do you juggle and balance your work life, school type things. And so we very intentionally create social networks. I also realized that the faculty relationships is really important to be really articulate in how we socialize our students into how to navigate their relationships with faculty. And even something as simple as very early on in our program, we say, you know what, you might want to ask your faculty how they want to be addressed. Some are very particular about being addressed as doctor, and some are not. So how do you write that email when you're asking? Those are some things that as in academia, we kind of assume that students know, but a lot of our first-gen doc students don't know that and are intimidated. And so to be able to really just be open and provide a space for those conversations about how do you navigate your faculty relationships, and what do our faculty expect or understand about our population of students and how to best support them. And then finally, the chapter kind of goes into some of the program supports that we have created that are specifically to support our first-gen doctoral students. Even something of looking at our university systems and making sure that the supports are available to our non-traditional doctoral students who, if you are taking all of your classes in the evening, and are there places for them to come and grab dinner even? Is the cafeteria open for them to grab something? Is the writing center available to them with hours that are accessible to our students, so that we can really create a space where our doc students feel like they belong? They're not a secondary afterthought on a primary undergraduate campus, but that they really belong on our campus and that they're part of our university. And so hopefully the chapter provides some really specific examples of how we've built a system of supports for our students so that they feel like they belong and they feel like they are part of this community that we have as academics, and that they have a place and they have just amazing contributions, and that we create a space for that.
Zora, how nice to kind of meet you. I'm happy to be next around the circle and have heard this beautiful bunch of things, but I'm also happy to follow you, and you just told us a beautiful story of the kind of privilege you felt you had that you made intentionally available to students in your program. You had support and community. You made sure other people had support and community. You had help decoding. You helped people do that decoding and navigating, not assuming that just because you got it, everybody got it. I mean, I'm so grateful that people like you are doing this work as well as sharing it with us. Lots of chances to show the road and so on. I have very little to say. You'll be glad to know because it is 7:25 on our time zone. My so-called afterword was a thank you letter to the authors. That's just as long as I showed you, not very long at all. I've noticed some themes, but you've heard them already about how unfamiliar, even weird academia can be, how steep the hierarchy is, and how each of you found ways to do something about that and to help other students now that some of you have become faculty members. The terrible isolation that some of you went through and or that feeling of being two of you at least, multiple selves, learning to code switch, learning to honor your multiple selves rather than replacing one with the other. There are so many things that I'm grateful for, but I think it's perhaps enough to finish the circle by mentioning how awesome it is. It's a very overused word, but I mean awe. How my own students, some of whom are here, in particular Dr. Crystena Parker-Shandal, but also Yecid in a smaller way, have gone so far beyond what I could have done that you didn't just survive being first-generation doctoral students. You're helping to change the world that you're part of. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and thank you so much to everyone. I hope everyone can see that these aren't just stories that we've shared this evening. It's a call to action, and we're all here to talk about dismantling barriers and creating a space where every scholar in academia thrives. And it's not because of their background, or it's really about the richness that everyone's background and identity brings. So thank you, Lori, Brent, Diyanah, Yecid, Miguel, Janel, Nanre, Rosa, Elizabeth, Zora, Kathy. Thank you for coming together this evening. Before we close, I'd like us to go back around our circle, and I'd like to invite you to all share one word about the doctoral journey. To close, we'll go in the same circle speaking order, and I will start. Resistance.
Resilience.
Perseverance.
This is my turn.
Okay.
Love.
Challenging.
Discourse.
Village.
Persistence.
Humbling.
Creating change.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for participating in First Gen Docs. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you, and I really do hope that this book will continue to inspire generations to come. So that ends our evening for today, and we will pause for any informal discussion that we're going to open it up amongst everyone at this time, but that does close our session for this evening. Thank you so much.
I was just gonna say, you know, you have a professor when the kids know how to jump on Zoom and interact and talk to everyone.
Just wanted to say really quick, thank you everybody for the work that you have done, Crystena, for putting all of this together. I read some of your chapters from the beginning to the end, and I'm very proud of all of us and all of you for you know, putting yourselves out there to tell us your stories. I have shared the book with some of my students as well, and hopefully all of us we keep inspiring the new generations of first gen doctoral students out there. And I just want to appreciate and take this time, although it's almost 1 a.m. in the morning here for me. I didn't want to go to sleep without saying thank you to everybody and see you one more time before letting go. Thank you.
Thanks, Yecid, and I hope
Thank you.
we could go into more of the flow as we talked. It's
Oh, you
from
want to say
the Four Pivots. It's a book that was
Sleep
recently
well.
published.
There's the
Thank you
doctoral
so
baby.
much.
She wants to say hi. So say hi.
Great. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everyone. It's
much.
been
Thank you all, and I
fun.
hope we can stay in
Thank
touch.
you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for everything, Crystena.
Yeah, thank you too, Janelle. So nice to see you.